We all know that 70 series Land Cruisers do not flex, but in this video I'm going to give you a list of modifications that you need to do to your 70 series Land Cruiser to make that suspension work. This is one of the most underrated suspension upgrades you can do to your Land Cruiser. And don't be worried, it's not a $30,000 Superior Engineering coil conversion kit. This one is going to be doing it on a budget.
This video is for you 70 series owners. I get plenty of questions regarding the 70 series suspension, more when I used to wheel this quite a bit. Now Gemma gets a lot of questions regarding the suspension and how it works so well and everything about the 70 series, because people say it and they sort of get a little bit shocked when they see what it actually does. One, it isn't a coil conversion in the rear. It's still leaf springs. I will go into depth with how to do it, how I did it, why I did it, costings, just a run through so you can sort of understand everything. A lot of people get sort of shook, like I said, when you see what it can do and they're like, oh yeah, but you've paid $30,000 for that coil conversion. This, if you're right, do it from the start and you're smart about it, could probably cost you under $2,000. Under $2,000, and it will operate just as good as a coil conversion, if not better, I think, in my eyes. It's crazy what it can do. I learnt this trick from another person I know in Canberra. I picked up on it in one of his photos on Instagram a couple of years back, and I asked him about it. He was kind enough to give me all the information I needed to know, but that's why I want to sort of give it out there, let everyone know what you can do if you're smart about it. I have seen some postings now on some of the 70 series groups that there is a person in Victoria that is doing a kit for this, and I'm pretty sure you can get it engineered. I've always said to Gemma that I think you could get it engineered. All you'd have to do is put in a rear sway bar, maybe some diff bracing just to keep the engineering happy, but we obviously haven't been down that path. At the end of the day, they're still going to defect you. So what it is welding a diff perch on top of the rear leafs. Everyone hates the 79 series because you get hung up on those rear leafs. They don't operate well, they lift wheels, they say you can't get flex out of them. The reason you can't really get flex out of the front is that front sway bar. There is still a sway bar in this, it stays in there all the time. All I do when I get off road is I disconnect it. It stays in the car, I disconnect it, I pivot it up and put pins through it so it's not connected to the diff anymore, it's connected chassis to chassis. So that way it doesn't stiffen up your diff and it doesn't sort of bind up everything. The next thing I did, it's got 3-inch flexi coils in the front. The only reason I put flexi coils is to allow for the droop so I don't go and unseat coils all the time. And then it has 6-inch patrol shocks in it from Superior. Obviously they're remote res, they would have cost about $400, I believe, each. I think they are about $380, I think they are, off the top of my head. The reason I went with 6-inch patrol, so patrols, 80s, 100 series, 79s, they're all the same mounting in the front. What I did is got it to full compression or full bump and then measured what the close distance was between the points and worked out what was the longest shock I could get at the time to suit this to give me maximum down travel. I wasn't losing any up travel because it was already on the up travel. The rear is diff perches welded on top of the diff. Then we have stock 79 series leaf springs. So they are what comes out of the factory. So you don't even need to buy any new leaf springs. You literally use the stock ones. I've removed, I believe, 2 springs to suit the weight of what I've got on the car. I will go into depth with that. You've got to fiddle around with your leaf springs and your weights to work out exactly what you had. I've had this set up with a meter canopy on the back, obviously fridge and camping gear, as well as a bear tray. And it's handled both of them great. Used to use this car before I got the 80 series with towing a work trailer, and my work trailer is about 2 ton. It's still handled perfectly fine. It sat a little bit low in the rear, but that's, you know, because I'm adding such a heavy weight to it. if you wanted to tow trailers all the time with it, you could keep, I've taken one load bearing leaf out, you could put both load bearing leaves back in, and then that way you'd be able to handle the load so much better. It has 2-inch Dobinson shocks. The reason it has the 2-inch Dobinson shocks, when I got the car, I built it not knowing much about four-wheel driving. I just went for a standard 2-inch kit out of the factory, and that's what I've left in the rear. I don't actually need any more down travel in the rear because it travels so well already, and because I've changed the mounting position of where the shock was, rather than being 200mm lower, it's 200mm higher now because of where the shock mounts. Theoretically, you could do the same in the rear, find your full bump, and then go and put the longest shock you could possibly get in it. I believe you could probably get a 3 or a 4-inch shock, which would give you more down travel. The only thing you'd have to look at then is unbolting your U-bolt that holds the leaf pack together for when you're off-road, because that would be the next step that sort of binds up, not allowing it to flex anymore. The only other thing you'd need to upgrade with this system are obviously brake lines, extended brake lines from chassis to diff, because you've got so much travel in that. Now, costings of doing the leaf over in the rear, you need some diff perches. I got mine from Superior. You can get them from multiple places. They're about $60, very easy, affordable. You need to be reasonably good at welding, or confident enough at welding. So obviously you need a decent welder to weld it on. U-bolts, instead of the U-bolts that you get with the 70s, they come as a actual U, a circular U. You need square type. So you can get 60 series leaf U-bolts. They come square on top. I believe I paid about $100-150 for them. That's it. That's all you need. So for the rear, to get it functioning so well, you need to spend $200. Pretty straightforward, it's pretty simple. People go spend $30,000 on a coil conversion, $200 in the rear, flip the leaves on top of the diff, and you're good as gold. The best thing I've always kept with doing this system, on the rear, you keep the factory mounting plate for the leaves on the bottom of the diff. So if anything was to ever happen, it would take me half an hour to flip these leaves back, put them back under the diff, and be a stock standard 79 again. With the front, another massive recommendation I can give: radius arms. Don't do the caster correction bushes, do proper radius arms. We have the Cowl off-road radius arms to suit, I believe, a 2 to 3 inch lift, or it might be a 3 to 4. I'm not 100%, I brought them a while ago. They're obviously going to be the most expensive part with doing this. Superior Hyperflex would be good. The person I learned everything off, he has Hyperflex arms. His flexes just as well as what ours does. As for ride height, we've got it sitting at about a 3-inch lift, so it's not ridiculously big. Center of gravity is still reasonably low. You don't need a 5 to 6 inch lift to gain anything, any extra travel up or down. Like it works perfect. It's so seamless the way it operates. Since the day I did it, I couldn't believe how much of a different car it was off-road. It struggles to lift a wheel now. Like, I go four-wheel driving quite a bit, as you may see, and it's very, very hard to lift a wheel in this. It's very, very hard to do it now. I reckon the rear end of this flexes better than what my 80 series does, and that has a lot of suspension parts done in the rear end of that. We'll jump on under the car here and we'll give you a little looky at everything. So I don't know how well we're all going to see this, but here's me laying on my garage floor underneath the car. Obviously, sway bar. I've got these extended because if you don't extend it, it will hit on your tail shaft right there. As you can see, less than light. It's not too bad, so it's pretty good. But you've got to drop it down so it doesn't hit that when you're flexing your car out. Now, as for my sway bar mount, so this is normally a bolt, and as you can see, I've got an R clip here that goes through the bolted pin. It's the same size as what your bolt is. It is recommended to continue to have your bolt through there. It's just simpler to have it like this. Now up here on your bump stop, you can see a bracket that bolts in. So this bracket here bolts into this bump stop, bolts into the bump stop there, and then you can see it's got a U shape with the holes. I've got that on both sides.
You can see I've got that on both sides. Give you a little demonstration on how simple this is. You want to be on nice level ground. Pull that out. Drop your U-bolts. Drop the bolt out. And then you twist. You've taken it out of the diff mounting position, and then you twist it up and you put it up on your chassis position, and then you put your bolts back through. So now we don't have chassis tied to diff, which will stop flex in the front. We've got chassis tied to chassis, and it stays in the car. I don't have to undo these bolts all the time to take it in and out to gain flex. I just literally do that, and then same process to put it back in, take the pin out, drop it back down, put the pin back through. And then we have our 6-inch patrol shocks for maximum down travel. I don't lose any up travel because when I get close to compressing this all the way in, I'm at my bump stop. As you can see, my flexi coils, the top couple are very close as like a progressive rating, so when they start to droop, these will open up, and that's what maintains a nice low height. They're 3-inch, but they're like 150 mil longer than my 2-inch Dobinson coils. That's how much they actually compress the weight to allow for droop. Remote res, which is easy. Change your settings up on top, as you would all know through Superior stuff. We'll go jump into the rear now. The rear is where all the magic happens. Right, I'm going to give you a run through, and I'll point at some things and then tell you exactly what happened and why it happened. And then once I've done that, I will pull the camera over and I'll give you a close-up on them. So this here is your factory Toyota bolting plate, leaf plate. That's what holds your leafs on, right? 2-inch Dobinson shocks, and then your factory leaf diff perch is in there. Factory leaf springs, new diff perch, new U-bolt. So factory mounting plate, it's not a high clearance one. If you look at the clearance I have, the diff pumpkin is now the lowest part of the car, which is what it should be. So now I'll give you a nice close look here. Factory mounting plate, stock factory diff perch for where the leaves mount. So these leaf springs up here would have mounted from here down. So that's where the 70 series get such bad names. And that would be, argument's sake, you got a pack, even parabolics at 80 mil, that's hanging down that far, which was what gets hung up on everything. And then this bolt here would be down here. So you can see the difference between that on travel. So I'm not extending the shock all the way out just because I've raised this plate up. Now up on top here, that there is the new diff perch that you weld in. It has locating holes as well. And then the U-bolts are square shaped on top, like a 60 series or a 75, same sort of design. All because you need to hold the bolts that way now through the factory mounting positions. So what you need to do with that diff perch, so you need to get a digital level and you need to put it on your diff pinion, the flat surface there, and on your transfer case. Put it on your transfer case, get that, hit 0 out, so it's 0.0. Go and transfer it to your diff and make sure that's 0.0 as well. That will allow your pinions to be correct because you want them to ride together, otherwise you're going to ruin your unis in your tail shaft. You want them to be parallel together at all times, which will work perfectly. Once you do that, you can weld your diff perch all the way on. Once you weld your diff perch on, it's pretty much just working out what sort of leaf pack you want to run for your setup. So the leaves in this have a very slight bow still in them. They're not dead flat, close to flat, but they're very, very slight. The reason they're very slight is to still allow for a little bit of compression up and down. They're nice and soft, they're not super stiff, so it's not a real bad ride. As for that, that is pretty much the rundown on the rear. It's super straightforward to do.
I don't know why more people don't go and do it. I can understand legalities, but if you can go get it engineered because you want to be completely legal, go for it. But yeah, super simple. I'll give you a couple little overviews from, you know, even my shackle length. Like the shackles are stock standard lengths. The leaf's sitting in there. You can see they've still got a slight bow in them. So overall, I 100% reckon it's worth doing if you're gonna wheel your 79. If you're gonna carry a hell of a lot of weight in a caravan, I don't think it's really a recommendation for that, and because you're more of a touring. It's great for clearance, great for flex, which is sort of your harder wheeling sort of area when you're going to wheel the car really, really hard, or you know, you're going to get out. If you're just going to do the odd trip down Fraser Island or the odd trip down the coast or something, like more of it just camping, wouldn't recommend. But if you're into your hard wheeling and you're sick of getting hung up on those rear leafs, it's a good idea. Make sure when you do it, you get those pinion angles correct on the rear of your transfer case and on your rear diff. Make sure you get them correct, and also make sure you set up the front suspension to help with it. You want to be able to have a front suspension that moves as well, to move with the rear. If you can get both operating good together, you're going to have a great full drive. If you've got any more questions, ask me, but I hope this fills out everyone's questions regarding the suspension of a 70 series. What I would nearly say is probably one of the best setups you can get in a 70 series without going into a coil conversion, which is a hell of a lot of money. Save yourself some coin, put a bit of money into the rear end of this like that, and go spend that 30 grand elsewhere.